But why tax cuts? Why not more spending?
Well, it'd be, what do you spend money on? What does the government spend money on?
Well, they
Because
invested in education and infrastructure rather than tax cuts, which will be spent on televisions from China.
I would like the federal government to come into the state of Michigan and say, we're going to repair every bridge and rebuild every road. This is stimulative. I'd say, this is great for the state. But it will take them 3 years to figure out if there are any turtles involved in that decision. And by the time they spend the money, the economy will have been recovered, and that's the problem with government spending. It takes too long. If they fly over and shovel cash out of helicopters, that would work better. That would be inflationary, but so it kind of has to be by cutting taxes. That's immediate. Yes?
Prescribed cutting taxes now twice, but at the same time we see Barack Obama now starting to open up a lead beyond the statistical margin of error. He's certainly not running as a tax cutter, and McCain is proposing taxes in some areas, but he's proposing taxing healthcare of all things. I guess, can you comment on a Barack Obama presidency or a John McCain presidency, and what they should be doing in the first year besides cutting taxes, especially with Barack Obama?
Well, of course, we already mentioned they need to address the whole student loan program. A lot of money needs to be pumped in there. They have to figure out what went wrong that caused the worldwide financial collapse. We are to blame for a lot of it. Banks have learned their lessons. You can't get a mortgage anymore. They've learned, okay? But we have to figure out how to strengthen the SEC, whether or not we're going to continue to pay interest on deposit reserves held at the Fed, which we just announced this week. For the first time ever, the Federal Reserve is going to pay interest on reserves. We've got to decide whether or not we want to keep the $250,000 limit on FDIC insurance. They're saying it's temporary. I don't see how we can go back on that one, and I'm not in favor of it, because the $100,000 was set in the late 80s, 20 years ago. Just inflation would have raised that $100,000 to probably closer to $200,000 now. That's something we have to deal with. We've got to deal with selling all these toxic bonds that we're buying, and fighting inflation will be big. If we start pumping all this money into the economy, we really run the risk of creating a pretty high rate of inflation. I don't know how we're going to handle that one. If we have a recession, there won't be inflation, but you've got to be careful there. So cut taxes, figure out what went wrong and fix it, and more stimulation. No doubt in my mind, the auto industry, the big three, is either gone or we need to pump more money there, irrespective of the $25 billion loans that have already been approved. That's 2 or 3 months worth of losses for the auto industry. Drop in a bucket. Put a zero on the end of that. Why not? Take stock like we did with Chrysler. When we loaned Chrysler money 25 years ago, Chrysler recovered, paid off the loan in record time. They had years to pay it off. They paid it off in 2 or 3 years. Hopefully that will happen here. I don't envy the next president. I don't know what in the world the president will be able to do other than to be a great conciliator, get everybody to agree. And your guess is as good as mine. Which of the two candidates is better at that? I don't know. All I know is President Reagan was good at that.
You've mentioned a lot about the federal level, but of course we're concerned about Michigan. What can our governor and state legislature do over the next months, and say we have a gubernatorial election in 2 years? What should be done?
There isn't anything we can do that the other states aren't also doing, so that's a pretty tough environment to operate in. What we did with the movie industry, the tremendous tax credits, I don't know if that'll pay off or not. We're losing money every film that's made in the state of Michigan. But all the jobs that are being created, I'm not sure when you take that into account. All the food vendors, all the hotels, motels, whether we really are losing money or not. But that was a clever idea, and probably good for the image of Michigan, especially if the movies aren't made in Detroit. It's not, you know, John the Hitman. I like that program. I also think we ought to seriously consider using the energy we have here in Michigan that a lot of other states don't have. We could create a lot of jobs. Put up those wind generators. Heaven's sakes, we have more wind than most states. Put them up right along Lake Michigan. Put them 10 miles offshore. And I know someone's going to say, well, that's ugly. I can't see that far, and neither can anybody else. So it's only ugly if you're a boater. And there are a lot of people that think boats are ugly out there too. So where do you draw the line? Where's the leadership? Put it up there. Put in some nuclear plants. Let's make Michigan the energy state. There's a lot we could do. We could even put in another coal plant. They're going to do that in Holland. That's a proposal. Liquefy the carbon dioxide and pump it down 6,000 feet and store it down there. If Holland can do it, the rest of the state can do it. We need to spend big time money on our roads. I think that's a major embarrassment. It's a major limitation to our economy here in the state. You cross from Indiana or Ohio into Michigan, and all of a sudden you can't carry on a conversation anymore. The road noise, the jarring. It's absolutely embarrassing to me. Let's fix them. Absolutely fix them. We're delivering a message to anybody that comes into Michigan. This is our infrastructure here. Fix it.
Any other questions?
Well, a philosophical question, you know, on leadership for Gleaves here. You know, you go through, you know, all the blame, and everybody involved seems to have participated and have blame, right?
Right, everybody.
So it seems to me what you have almost is then no blame for any individual, because no individual, if you're in an environment where everybody's on the same page, where everybody's thinking the same way, if you say there's something wrong, you're going to be fired or marginalized or considered a crank, right? You could not, unless maybe you're a university professor who is expected to be a crank, right? And then you could say these things like the system is off kilter or whatever, but people will then point at you and say, well, you know, if people start listening to you, they'll believe you, and you'll be the one that's the fault for the whole thing collapsing. So it goes back, I guess, the leadership question there. Okay, if you're in that environment and everybody's on the same page and everybody is participating in this, so if you're, you know, we move back the clock, say 3, 4, 5 years, right, and this is all going on, what is it possible for anybody to really have done anything, and who would that person be, and how would they have had an impact to fix it before it happened without, as I say, just appearing like you're some crank out, you know, in left field?